That hastily enacted mid-election year law that blocked individuals slating onto the November ballot if they didn't run in the primary has been blocked by a district court judge in the state of Illinois. And it's interesting to see how quick things roll, especially when you've got the election just months away. Welcome back. It's Bishop on Air. I'm Greg Bishop. I'm a Statehouse reporter for my full-time gig. Me hanging out with you here's on my own time, so I appreciate you guys tuning in and being part of the program. We go live to tape each and every weekday morning, so be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to get that notification. So let's get into it because a lot's happened in the past 24 hours, and of course, we're in the final days of legislative session. And I want to encourage you, go check out the centersquare.com, centersquare.com, and you can find the Illinois page where we give you the latest headlines from a taxpayer's perspective, so you know what's going on in state government. So you'll see some of these headlines here. Proposal would freeze Illinois' gas tax increase for 2 years. Illinois House okays additional retirement plan for retired first responders. Some of the concerns there. We'll delve into a few of these, but you've also got legislators advancing a measure to require social media companies to pay local journalists and newsrooms. Another interesting proposal stacked on top of what we talked about previously, where some Democrats at the Statehouse are looking to require local news media to notify the state if they're intending to sell to an outside of state buyer. But here's the headline that I think has got a lot of people's attention just with the mass amount of interest that there was in this law when it passed. You have an Illinois court order halting that mid-election rule change that Pritzker enacted. So if you remember earlier this month, the House Democrats, they took a Senate bill that had already passed the Senate. And just for some background, Civics 101 for everybody. In the state of Illinois, we have a bicameral legislature, and I've got picture-in-picture here. Look at that. In the Illinois General Assembly, we have a bicameral legislature. We have a House and we have a Senate. For each Senate district, there's 2 House seats. In the House, if they pass a bill, it goes to the Senate. Then the Senate passes it, it goes to the governor for signature. Now, if the Senate passes a bill, goes to the House, passes there, and goes to the governor. But when a Senate bill goes to the House and the House amends that Senate bill, they have to then go back and concur on it in the Senate before it can go to the governor. Make sense? So hopefully you understand how this has happened before in the past. You have what are, essentially gut and replace tactics that are done. So the House took a bill that passed the Senate, gutted and replaced it. The bill originally dealt with DCFS, Department of Children and Family Services in the state of Illinois. So they gutted and replaced the DCFS bill and put in a measure dealing with election law. We're in the middle of an election year. November's the election. We had a primary in March. But in the state of Illinois, regardless of, your criticism of the state of Illinois' primary process and the process of appointing vacancies, including on a ballot, like the slating process, regardless of your criticism of that, we're in the middle of the game, all right? The rules of the game were put out there beginning, actually at the end of last year, if not after the last election 2 years ago. But those rules have been in place, and people have been mostly abiding by those rules. If they don't, then they get challenged in the State Board of Elections and so on. But regardless, earlier this month, Democrats changed the rules in the middle of the game. They hastily, within 3 days, gutted and replaced a bill, passed it out of both chambers, and the governor signed it. And the bill would ultimately says that you can't slate a candidate for the November ballot if they weren't on the March primary. But you have people who are looking to be slated in their districts, like several in Chicago, saying that there was no Republican that wanted to run in that district for the primary. So after I saw there was nobody running, it was too late for me to get into the process, so now I'm petitioning to be not a write-in, but a slated candidate by the local party so that I can be on the November ballot to give some choice to the voters in that district. So you have this, brief overview. Just wanted to give you guys the background because you never know who's just now tuning in. But here's the headline again. So after the governor signed that, people sued, and then that lawsuit in Sangamon County Court here in Springfield, a judge ordered essentially the law to be on pause for a preliminary basis. while the case plays out. So the Liberty Justice Center securing that court order for the law that changed mid-election year, temporarily halting enforcement of the law. Now, Governor J.B. Pritzker, if you recall, he called this what did he call it? He called it an ethics bill, if you recall. So this was, after he had heard about it and saw that the House had passed it and moved forward with it. The governor was asked if he would sign this election year change, this mid-election year change, and here's his response.
Well, as I understand that bill, and it, put through, I think, yesterday, and I haven't seen the details of it, but as I understand, this is actually an ethics bill. It really does make sure that, we don't have backroom deals to put people on the ballot and run as a result of, some small group of people in a smoke-filled room making the choice. So I think, to me, more transparency is better.
So again, the governor ultimately saying it's an ethics bill. But it quickly passed. The governor enacted it. Lawsuits filed, and the lawsuit's going to play out. But the law is halted as of right now. The next hearing in the case is June 3rd, which just so happens to be the deadline that people have to file to get slated for the November election. We'll definitely watch this space closer as well. But back to some other headlines from thecentersquare.com that popped yesterday. Let's go ahead and delve into this one here from State Representative Dan Calkins. He was talking yesterday about how he wants ultimately to freeze Illinois' gas tax increase for 2 years. And he brought a whiteboard to him at his news conference. And that whiteboard spelling out how much Illinois' tax has increased in the past several years, going from 13 cents a gallon back in 1989, he says, to 16 cents in 1990, 19 cents in 2019. If you recall, in 2019, it was doubled to pay for an infrastructure project. Now it's up to 45 cents because you've got an additional annual increase. Yes, July 1st, your gas tax is going to increase again in the state of Illinois. It's going to go from 45 cents to like 47 cents. And that's a lot of money going to roads. But State Representative Dan Calkins saying that he ultimately wants to freeze that for 2 years so it doesn't increase for 2 years as a way to help individuals with the cost of energy. So will that go anywhere? Republicans are in the super minority, so it's hard to say it. But maybe it's a conversation starter. The governor's looking to reduce the 1% grocery tax statewide, saying that would provide relief, but you got to imagine a lot of people have to drive, especially in rural areas, and the cost of gas, what is it? It's like $3.70 or something in some areas in southern Illinois. Not Chicago. I'm not talking about Chicago and Cook County and the suburbs. I'm talking about southern Illinois. It's still pretty expensive. So will that go anywhere? Highly doubt it. But some other headlines here. This one's interesting as well. Could come up in the Senate today, and that is a measure impacting auto voter registration. So this measure changes who gets ultimately impacted with auto voter registration, and that's a bill that was ultimately enacted by former Governor Bruce Rauner back in 2017. And it says that if you have a contact with a state agency, you're automatically registered to vote. Like going to the DMV, get a new driver's license, boom, you're registered to vote. Of course, you got to be a U.S. citizen to get registered to vote. But there's some worry that this measure that would ultimately allow for individuals applying for a driver's license or a real ID to have even easier access to auto voter registration. So yet another measure that could come up today. But then you get into the issue of local media and whether or not it's strong enough. All right. And this headline here, Illinois, let me go back. You've got State Senator Steve Stottlemyre. He's looking to essentially say that if a social media company has somebody share on their news feed a news link, like for instance, you go to thecentersquare.com/Illinois, and you share a story on your Facebook feed for other people to view. A measure that's advancing at the Statehouse would require social media companies to pay the local newsroom. So person A, who doesn't work at the Center Square, shares a news story, and then the social media company has to pay not person A, but the news outlet. This has happened in Canada, and what did Facebook do? Canada, they don't have news links on their social media like Facebook. Similar law was passed, and Meta, Facebook's parent company, began blocking news links rather than paying local journalists. So go check out the story at thecentersquare.com, and you'll see that State Senate Minority Leader John Curran essentially raised the question of, what's going to happen here? It's going to backfire. He says likely to lead to less readership, less access, less traffic on the websites of these publishers. So what's the solution here? It's hard telling. I'm just watching as a reporter myself. But some of the other proposals they've had include giving tax breaks to those who hire local journalists. They haven't advanced that, but they did advance a measure, and we talked about briefly the other day about requiring that local news publications, if they want to sell to an out-of-state company, then they have to tell the state government within 120 days that they're looking to sell. And people said, well, that's just going to backfire as well because that'll devalue the property. So these are some of the major headlines. Again, you can find more at thecentersquare.com. And don't forget, it's not just Illinois. You can go and check out the national page as well, where you can get more headlines of what's going on in and around Illinois, Missouri, Indiana, and beyond. So go check out thecentersquare.com. Back at it today for the Illinois Statehouse. It's going to be another busy day. It was a 12-plus hour day yesterday. Right now, we're in the phase where they're just blasting measures out of the chamber. So the Senate's going to have a whole bunch of legislation from the House they're passing. The House has a whole bunch of legislation from the Senate they're passing. Have we seen any budget? We could see a budget late tonight, so we may have to talk about that because they have a scheduled adjournment date of May 24th. That's tomorrow. However, they have until the 31st to pass a budget with simple majorities. Could we see them come back after Memorial Day? It's possible. So we'll keep you updated, guys. And appreciate you being here. And for those who come here to check out some of the latest in headlines about litigation against gun bans, do want to give you just a brief update here. The U.S. Supreme Court has yet another conference day today. All right, it's a conference day and a non-argument day on the 23rd of May. They have an order list they'll put out on Tuesday. Will they relist Illinois' gun ban challenges? Because the last order list they put out this week did not include Illinois' gun ban challenges. They essentially relisted it. So they're back in conference today, and we could get a update on Tuesday. Again, Tuesday. After Memorial Day. So that's just something else that you can keep an eye on, and we'll definitely update you as we can, all right? So be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. It's Bishop on Air. As I prepare to get out of here, looking at the numbers at the tail end here, appreciate you guys. And be sure to check us out again in the very near future here with Bishop on Air.